A pleasant day, everyone. I am Vince Mirande, and together with Miss Kheychell and Miss Berlyn, we are going to unpack the topic developing materials for speaking skills. To start off, let's first recall what is speaking and its respective skills. So basically, I'm actually doing it right now. So speaking is an interactive process where information is shared and, if necessary, acted upon by the listener. According to Chane in 1998, speaking is the process of building and sharing meaning through the use of verbal and nonverbal symbols in a variety of contexts. On the other hand, speaking skills are the skills which enable us to communicate effectively. They give us the ability to convey information verbally and in a way that the listener can understand. Speaking skills can be separated into formal and informal, and we use both types of speaking skills in a variety of contexts throughout life. Informal speaking skills are important for conversations with friends and family, helping us to form emotional connections, while formal speech is necessary for workplaces or in schools. Moving forward, we have four elements of speaking skills, and all of these are necessary in advancing our language skills. The first one is vocabulary. It enables students to understand the meanings and pronunciations of words necessary for communication. Did you know that to be considered fluent in a language, you need to have a vocabulary of around 10,000 words? Like, that's a lot. So, as English teachers, we should keep learning new words. We also have grammar. So, you may think that grammar is something we only need for written language, but grammar includes lots of important areas for spoken language, such as an understanding of tenses and the correct way to structure sentences. The third element is pronunciation. It involves an understanding of the small units that make up spoken language. Remember that pronunciation varies from country to country and even city to city. And lastly, we have fluency. It is the ability to hear words and understand them straight away. So it's really important to develop these skills because they enable us to form connections, influence decisions, and motivate change. Without communication skills, the ability to progress in the working world and in life itself would be nearly impossible. The benefits are enormous and will always have a positive influence on both your personal and professional life. Also, without well developed communication skills, children run the risk of falling behind their peers or becoming emotionally overwhelmed or withdrawn at school. Now let's dive deeper into the topic. For more information, here is Miss Kheychell Nacasabog.
Good day everyone, this is Kheychell Nacasabog and the first topic that I am going to share with you today is the developing materials for speaking skills. According to Bygate, one way to understand the notion of speaking skills is by viewing them in two basic aspects: motor receptive skills and interaction skills. Motor receptive skills are reading and listening. These skills are essential in mastering or acquiring a new language, and interactive skills refer to the ability to interact with the external world. These sets of skills involve mastering of sounds and structures and making decisions about what and how to say things in specific communicative situations to convey the right intention or maintain relationships. Moreover, much research on language awareness suggests that the teaching sequence does not have a structured before the communication of meanings, but content-based activities can be organized for learners to experience and respond to the meaning first. The content-based activity focuses on the content rather than simply learning the language. It makes the subject matter interesting and engaging. For example, the educator will collect suitable resources that deal with different aspects of the subject. This could be reference book, an audio or video lectures, and ask the learners to write a report about what they have learned using their new language. Content-based activity extends the students' vocabulary, knowledge, and writing and speaking skills that will help them acquire the language. Speaking skills are best developed when learners are exposed and let them explore the language rather than being controlled by the teacher. Second language materials, like for example course books, should be created not only by writers but also by teachers and learners as viewed by Tomlinson. Tomlinson's perception coincides nicely with Noonan's view that teaching communication should be seen as a process rather than a set of products. Therefore, it is more focused on the learner's development in acquiring the language rather than the learner's outcome. just like the brain's process of syllabus, which focuses on skills and process of language learning. According to this syllabus, when the materials is scripted by a writer, they appear in a form of the pre-designed plan rather than the final production and are open to reinterpretation by the users of that plan, for example, teachers and learners. It is stated that language materials, for example, course book, do not necessarily provide all the information or answer. They will let the teachers and the student understand and explain the subject matter in a different way. The best way to develop the pre-designed sketches into relevant materials that promote language learning is through interaction. In other words, implementing classroom tasks will serve as a practical tool for the collaborative creation of relevant materials. If materials are constructed for speaking skills, the interactive process by the designer and the users should take place through speaking, since it would be unrealistic for participants to simply sit there and silently imagine how talk might work from a written script. And that would be all for the developing materials for speaking skills, and the next topic will be the trends in materials for speaking skills. I will just going to briefly discuss this topic, and I will let Miss Berlyn Suldahan explain the whole concept later on. Course books nowadays are precisely where principles and practice are brought together. In the mid-1960s, the linguistic system were emphasized as the main method to master a second language. However, there had been a shift of method in language learning. 1970 witnessed a communicative revolution in which meaningful activities replaced mechanical language exercises. This change, however, was not perceived by many teachers and learners as a beneficial revolution at all, since it took away all the confidence learners used to have thanks to what they perceive as systematic and sufficient grammatical input. So, in the 1980s, they make an attempt to make the communicative approach less difficult and did not put too much emphasis on that area. In this way, the learner's need for linguistic knowledge and mastery of speaking skills will be ignored. There had been a strong reaction against the communicative approach, the fact that the new methodology was attempting to replace structural approach. Therefore, alongside this debate, these approaches are considered to be included in second language teaching. By virtue of this compromise view, in the early 1990s saw the idea of a multi-dimensional syllabus becoming more explicitly and systematically addressed, which opened up new possibility for encompassing a more comprehensive series of teaching dimensions such as functions and notions, rules and skills, themes and situations. The main purpose of this type of syllabus, as pointed out by McDonough and Shaw, is to build on a range of communicative criteria as at the same time as acknowledging the need to provide systematic practice in the formal properties of the language. The recognition of learner differences and the importance of divergent responses in learning have been reflected in material developments over the decades. Therefore, the way how to develop the materials has evolved and learning becomes complex when English language teaching materials are no longer represented in a single textbook but come as a multi-dimensional package. Learning complexity has also been demonstrated when technological advance has been implemented and seems like a standalone textbook could become a thing of the past. Since the classroom environment is often not heterogeneous but mixed to some degree in linguistic proficiency, interpersonal skill, age, academic background, gender, personality, language aptitude, learning styles, and other factors, according to Nuna 1991, one of the major concerns of language materials is the capability of catering for the diversity of needs which exist in most language classrooms.
A pleasant day to our dear viewers. I am Berlyn Suldahan, and since Miss Kheychell has already given you a brief yet substantial overview of the trends and materials for speaking skills, at this point we will delve deeper into discovering more primarily about speaking skills. According to Dodgel 1987, Graves 2001, language teaching is full of choices and alternatives, and no one is totally sure of which way is right. This statement puts emphasis on the three activity samples taken from three English course books published in 1987, 1991, and 1999. The first one is Streamline English, Hartley and Vinny 1978-1996. Lesson 6, A Nice Flat. Students are asked to describe a room from a given picture. There is no freedom of choice and hardly any peer interaction involved in the task, since all information comes directly from the same visual. Every learner performs the same role. So, if you take a closer look at the figure, you can see a sofa, a table, chair, books, bottles, you name it. There are also exercises that you can see from the figure which come from the visible things in the picture of the living room. In exercises 1 and 2, students may be able to construct a simple sentence using a specific thing that they can see in the picture, such as describing that the books are on the shelf or simply the sofa in the living room. On the other hand, exercises 3 and 4 basically focus to the questions that students are owed to identify as to how things are being placed in the picture, such as a magazine is on the table and that on the shelf with the books. Next is Interchange, English for International Communication, Book 3 Activity, Same or Different, in Unit 12, Richard, Hall, and Proctor 1991. Students are provided with several sets of pictures depicting different object items and invited to discover how these items differ by asking each other questions. This activity utilizes the decoding and encoding gaps, which encourages students to exchange factual data. There are two different roles to perform: information seeker and information provider. There is still no freedom of choice, just like the sample activity 1, but at least learners are given the opportunity to interact for a purpose. So there should be students who will actively play their roles in order for this to work. This is somewhat a collaborative effort among the students as a way of gaining accurate information based on the given sets of pictures. As a result, it can harness their speaking skills by interpersonal communication with their classmates. And lastly, we have Language in Use Pre-Intermediate, Dolph and Jones 2002, Activity 1 of Unit 3, talking about the places. So it invites learners to look at a picture of 5 different doors and imagine the rooms behind them. Since there are no right or wrong answers, students are encouraged to process meanings from their own experiences and perspectives. So, besides providing freedom of choice, this material takes learners beyond the level of information gap into two new areas: reasoning gap, which involves deriving data by interference and perception, and opinion gap, which encourages personal feelings and attitude. Now, unlike the two other samples, this particular sample seeks the personal opinions of the students pertaining to the 5 pictures of doors indicating different places. They will be tasked to critically identify the things and the choices as to where they are appropriately belong to. For instance, the first 2 doors, let's say the door on the left is a hotel room and the door on the right is an office room. So if we are to acknowledge the choices inside the box: a map on the wall, 2 phones, flowers by the window, and a blackboard could be in the office, whereas an ashtray, a video in the corner, flowers by the window, and a thick carpet could be in the hotel room. Aside from that, they can also add up to those things if they think that something else are inside each doors, such as a huge bed in the hotel room and a desk in the office, so that could be possible answers. Students should also identify the whereabouts of the last three doors. Let's say the first one is a restaurant where things like menu, table, chair, and reception desk can be found. And the second door might be a door in the living room where things such as television, picture, sofa, clock, and magazine can be found. And the last door could be a door to a bedroom where things such as bed, clock, phone, shower, and computer can be found. Then after that, they can try to compare their answers to their classmates in order to see if they got the correct or the same answers and if they have identified the same place behind those doors. So many examples like this one can be found across course books over the years that demonstrate a shift from mechanical rehearsal of language structure to more interactive exchange of factual information, and another shift from interactive exchange of factual information to more dynamic processing of personal opinions.
Hello, once again. We are down to the last segment of this discussion, which is utilizing verbal sources from real life. So, in many cases, preparing materials might just be one third of the job, that is, providing opportunities for learning. The implementation and modification of these materials are the processes that really help bridge the gap between plans and effects. So, through all of this, we can ensure that our plans meet our ideal outcomes for the success of our students' language learning. To modify materials besides printed sources such as magazine articles or pictures as a springboard for communication, course developers can also utilize many verbal interactions taken from real life and in the classroom. One example of this is the practical teaching idea that was proposed by Tay in 1988, which is by taping learners' peer group interaction in their target language and analyzing it. It is through this type of exercise that typical conversational difficulties or obstacles can be identified and translated into problem-based strategies for teaching verbal communication. So basically, in this modern time, it's filming or recording the students' interaction in this particular language and trying to assess the issues in that recording and coming up with a solution or strategy to better teach verbal communication. Researchers have provided evidence that many conversations composed from the writer's own assumptions of spoken language do not always reflect actual context of use, especially when they skip over many essential strategies required by real life communication situations. That's why we have another method, and it's finding opportunities to compare naturally occurring conversations with the designer's version, which deal with the same topic. So try making the writer's or the designer's versions more relatable and comprehensible by associating it with naturally occurring conversations. And we also have keeping a diary might also be a realistic way to collect resources for designing speaking activities. So we can make use of our journals to accumulate handy resources for designing effective speaking activities. These resources may come from conversations that we had overheard in public places or from radio or television interviews or from watching drama or movies, or even from our interaction with native speakers in the target language. So there are lots of resources available to language teachers today, from textbooks to online teaching tools. They can all aid and enrich the speaking skills. Many teachers also introduce authentic English material into their lessons to expose learners to the language as it is spoken in the real world. So, what is authentic material? Authentic material is any material written in English that was not created for intentional use in the English language classroom. Using this content to teach the English language can make the learning process even more engaging, imaginative, and motivating for students. It can also be useful to elicit genuine responses from learners. Authentic materials provide real-life examples of language use in everyday situations. They can serve as reminders to learners that there is an entire population who use the target language in their everyday lives. We actually have three categories for authentic material, but for this scale, I want to give emphasis on the first one, which is authentic listening viewing materials. Such materials include TV commercials, quiz shows, news clips, movies, soap operas, professionally audio taped short stories and novels, radio ads, songs, and sales pitch. So listening and speaking skills are actually interconnected. So using these materials can also enhance the verbal communication skills. So here are two authentic materials that can be used in developing speaking skills. We have songs. Listening to English songs is a great way of boosting the pronunciation skills and confidence in using the language. We can also learn a lot of vocabularies from different songs. We also have sales pitch, where we can task our students to sell something and convince people to buy their products. So we really have to be resourceful. We can use a lot of resources and we can do recycling just to be able to come up or develop instructional materials to advance our students' speaking skills. So I think that ends our discussion. Thank you so much for listening and may God bless us all.